Newsfirst, Newsline Prime with Araz Shaukat Ali.
Hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to Newsline Prime. And what a wonderful day it's been. It's been full of surprises, but the weather's held up after all. And on this wonderful evening, we've got somebody all the way down from the coast of Sri Lanka, from Weligama, where he's the chairman of the Weligama Urban Council. And right here, live in the studio, is Mr. Rehan Jayavikrama. Very good evening to you, Rehan.
Good evening to you, Faraz.
And it's marvelous having you on our program, and thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
And straight away, I want to ask you, you're obviously, judging by your youth, you are obviously reflective of the youth in the United National Party. And the younger members of the United National Party have been rather busy in the last few weeks. And so in light of what's happened in the last few weeks, especially in the last day or so, I thought I'd ask you, in terms of the UMP candidacy, what now? I ask you what now because yesterday we saw an attempt to sort of, at cabinet level, to get rid of the presidency. It's almost funny because nobody appears to know exactly who put forth the cabinet paper. In any event, it appears to have been shot down. And therefore, what now?
The thing is, for us, when you talk about this election and when you talk about our candidate from the UMP, you have to keep in mind that as of now, 50 or 52 out of 77 MPs have come forward and they have written a letter to the PM, to the Prime Minister, asking our Deputy Leader to be the presidential candidate. Right. Not the leader of the UMP. We are asking for only the candidateship. Then we have the Provincial Council arm, which out of 120 provincial councillors, 99 of them have explicitly shown their interest towards the same thing the Parliament group wants. Now, if you take that one step further and if you talk about the grassroots, just the other day at Sugaddas, when the whole local government members were summoned by our deputy leader, out of 4,000, 3,900 of them raised their hand for the deputy leader, Sajith Premadasa, to be the candidate. So the party is not just made out of, this is not the PM's Christmas party, no.
Right.
This is the United National Party. It is not only up to him to decide who should be our candidate. It is not only up to the working committee to decide. There are three arms, which is the parliamentary group, the provincial council group, and the local government group. So if there is an absolute majority in what these people want, I really don't understand what the hold-up is. For me, it's a joke. It's actually a joke about the steps that have been taken to try and prevent this. Now, first, even before the abolishment of the executive presidency, they used a single phrase that the speaker used against him. But when you read his whole interview in the Daily Mirror, he explicitly states that, that Sajith Premadasa is a very capable person, that he's a 52-year-old politician who is far beyond his years in terms of wisdom and in terms of political knowledge. And he said that he doesn't see anything wrong with him running, but at the same time he did mention that he is against the abolishment of the executive, he is for the abolishment of the executive presidency, and that if there are progressive forces that want him to contest it, he will do it. But he never said that he was going to do it without the backing of the UMP. Now I'm sure the speaker himself knows the amount of MPs that signed this letter.
Yeah.
And for us, if you remember correctly, the abolishment of the executive presidency is not something that's been discussed just yesterday. No, every single leader from President Chandrika Kumaratunga has promised to abolish this.
Indeed, that was going to be another question of mine, but you've beaten me to it. So yes, carry on, please.
So Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga, Madam Bandaranaike, she promised to abolish it. President Rajapaksa promised to abolish it. And very recently, the president also promised to abolish it. But Sajith Premadasa is the only leader who hasn't promised to abolish it.
Right.
That's because it's very easy to use this term, the abolishment of the executive presidency, but you have to also remember that there is a parliamentary group And why most of these leaders failed to abolish the presidency is because of the fact that we couldn't get enough support from parliament. I'm not talking about the past couple of years, I'm talking about since 1994.
Right.
So this is a promise that has to be made not at a presidential election. This is a promise that has to be made during a general election, because it's up to the parliament MPs to decide.
That's right, because the president can't act on his own.
The president can't. Even with his executive powers, he can't. And when it was a joke to me because this was done after the gazetting of the presidential election. So why did it have to wait till it was gazetted?
Right.
You know, if my memory serves me correctly, the JVP is the only party that submitted a private member's motion to abolish the executive presidency somewhere back in May 2018.
But no such thing has come from any member
from any other party. It hasn't come from either the SLFP, it hasn't come from the UMP, because you have to talk practically when you try to implement these things.
Yes.
And what our Sri Lankan public sometimes gets fooled by is that they take this word as election promise, but it's actually not supposed to be election promise.
Yes.
It's something that should be made at a general election forum.
Yes, and I think for the benefit of our listeners, we need to point out that to abolish the executive presidency, it would require a constitutional amendment, a constitutional change, if you like. And the Constitution envisages this, that you need to have a majority in Parliament, I believe a 2/3 majority.
Yes.
And thereafter to be followed by a referendum of the people.
Exactly.
And it is then that it will be put into action, which is why we say that that you need the Parliament to be with you in the case of trying to abolish the presidency. That's why we need the Parliament. That's correct, am I?
Yes, of course. And that was the most recent judgment given in the Supreme Court, where they said that it's not only a 2/3 that we need.
Yes.
We also need a referendum.
Yeah.
So where do you get the time to do so once the election has been gazetted and the nominations are going to close on the 8th? I mean, it's all a facade, no?
Yes.
I mean, and it shouldn't be done. And I completely agree with the sentiments of my deputy leader when he came outside that meeting and he said that this is a despicable act. And it actually is. Because I can honestly tell you that for us, ever since I wrote that letter to the PM, and I wrote it all the way back in May,
right,
when there was no one, pushing for this.
Yeah.
I wrote him a letter, and I was very sincere about it.
Right.
All what I told him was, I said, please hand over the party leadership to Sajid Premadasa or the presidential candidateship.
What made you write that letter? What was
okay, so that's a secret I'll tell you on this show. So basically, soon after the April 21st attacks, I was thoroughly disappointed with all forms of politics from all across the board. Not just my party, but I was disappointed with all parties in general. And I was actually telling my wife that I wanted to give up, that I was sometimes thinking of giving up this job because it was sad for me to see what was happening in the country, especially after April 21st. So then on one Sunday, I got up in the morning and I decided that I was going to do this letter. And there was only one person that I spoke to about this, and that was my wife. I said, I'm going to do this. Do I have your support on this? And she said, 100%. Whatever you want to do, you can do. So when I submitted that letter, soon after the news clip was over, I immediately got a call from the deputy leader. And he said, now tell me who put you up to this. You're a hell of a fellow. No, who put you up to this?
And who did put you up to it?
No one.
No one?
No one. My district leader, Honorable Mangala Samaravira, didn't know about this for the till I did it. And I actually turned my phone off for the next 2 days because I was scared that he's a close family friend of ours as well. I thought that he would call me and he would give me a shelling for not consulting him. But the youth for us is very different nowadays. I mean, I'm not going to be part of a system where I'm going to be a slave to politics, because I'm only a slave to the people that voted me in, not the other way around.
And then, of course, you have a remarkable sort of record in that. You got over, 81 point something %.
I topped the island-wide highest. I was the candidate that got the highest percentage from the whole country, yes.
Right, it was 81.
81.2, yes.
Right, so 81.2 of the votes at the local government
election, yes.
That was the last.
That was the last time,
right.
2000, yeah.
So obviously you have a commitment to the people there.
Because I believe that politics is a very easy thing if you're not corrupt and if you're straightforward. If you're straightforward and if you're not corrupt, you can have the ability to come to any program like this and open your heart and open your mind and open your soul to what the real problems of the people are, because I have no reason to be scared, because I got suspended in less than 3 days after making this statement. And I'll tell you something very interesting, something I think the country should know, or the people should know. Soon after this was, I made this statement, I was immediately summoned by the General Secretary for an impromptu and informal meeting.
Right.
And I went for this. And they asked me my reasons behind it, and I very clearly explained, I have nothing to hide. They asked me if I was going to retract, and I said no, I was not going to do it. And soon after I made that statement, I was suspended in less than 3 days.
When you say suspended from the membership?
I was suspended from the membership because they would have thought that by suspending me that I would have lost my position as a chairman of the council. I didn't.
Right.
Because after this new system was put in place, this new electoral system, the chairman can only be removed once he's expelled from a party,
right,
without an injunction in court.
Right.
Right. So I was ready for all this, because I had absolutely nothing to hide. Now if I am a person that opens my office at 6 in the morning,
yeah,
and functions till about 7:30, 8 in the night. I have public days not only on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday, I have a public day every day of the week.
Right.
There is no particular public day.
Right.
Every day is a public day for me.
Right.
And if you look at a ratio, if 100% of the people come to see me, 99.9 of them told me that they wanted Sajith Premadasa to be the leader of the UMP. Now, if I did not pay any attention to it, what good is the vote that they gave me? What good is the trust they placed in me?
On a related note, when you have these public days, which is, like you say, every day, what, apart from leadership, what sort of problems, what sort of concerns are the people telling you?
The main issue is infrastructure, certain development lapses that a lot of people have promised now. A lot of politicians promise development, they give development promises during election. And they sometimes, for us, they wait until the end of the election to fulfill them. But I, for example, have most of the promises I gave during my first bid, I have already done it.
Right.
Because I don't want to leave it till the end. So what these people, the main problems that they have is they have the levels of poverty, the levels of basic infrastructure like bathrooms, etc., the infrastructure in schools. But now, while saying all this, they also, people nowadays are very smart, right?
Well, I mean, there are about 6 million smartphones. And on that note, on Newsline Prime and on Newsline in the mornings, we do encourage you to send us your questions by SMS 0772 300 305, and those questions come right here live, and you can send your questions to Rehan Jayavikrama on whatever you want to, whatever is on your mind. And of course, we are in conversation with Rehan Jayavikrama, who is the chairman of the Urban Council in Weligama. I want to ask you, what about all these people who've put up a whole new industry in surfing, and the beaches there, and we had all that trouble in Mirissa, and these are all entrepreneurs who've sort of did it themselves, and only to be closed down because of lack of formal permission and so on. What's the situation on that?
That incident that happened at Mirissa, even though it was very unfortunate, it was not something that always happens in Mirissa.
Right.
So it should have been handled better. It should have been handled in a way where you only take action against a particular establishment that was involved in this whole fracas.
So why did everyone have to close down?
Everyone had to close down.
Yeah.
So it's a joke for us. I mean, do you see that happening? Do you see that happening in countries that have booming tourism like Thailand?
But there was a very important. I've met scores of people who bemoan what happened in Mirissa.
Yes, and I was one of the first people who actually wrote a letter to His Excellency, telling him in his power as the Minister of, because I think coast conservation also comes under his purview, I specifically mentioned to please ensure that this doesn't happen, because this will ruin the tourism trade for the next few years at least. Now, to top it all off, after that happened this April Sunday incident.
Yes. So how is it doing now since April?
Because of the fact that surfers in general, they are a very niched kind of market. They only come to catch the waves.
Yeah.
They don't mainly come here to party. They'll get up at 5 in the morning. They'll catch the wave and they'll do that number and they'll come back. So that market is now picking up again because most of them are from countries like Russia, where things like this for them, even though it's not normal to us, they have a lot of violence there. So they basically have started coming out in numbers, and I'm not really sure about Mirissa, and I don't want to comment on Mirissa because that falls under the Weligama Pradesh Sabha.
Right.
But I encourage surfing to a big degree in Weligama, and tourism is picking up in Weligama, and I'm sure that by next year, by next season, we will see at least a 50% increase in comparison to the numbers that were taken in during the April attack.
There are lots of small players, individual operatives within the tourism industry in your area, in Weligama. And how has any of these motions put forward by the government, like moratorium on loan payments and so on, post the Easter attacks, have they actually helped? Are they helping?
So basically, most of the things that the surfing people or the tourism people in Weligama, what they don't have is that they are not legal, and that's not just not in Weligama. That's
when you say not legal, they're not registered with the tourist board.
They are not registered with the tourist board. Not that they don't like to get registered, but they are not given proper guidance. But after I came into the picture in Weligama, for example, I got the Minister of Finance involved in this because he's also from the Matara district, and we had an Enterprise Sri Lanka one-day service in Weligama. It was first held in Weligama, and we gave out a lot of liquor licenses to legal establishments because it came to a point where the cops were sometimes harassing tourists for drinking a bottle of beer.
I see.
So the finance minister was also very concerned about this, and he told me to personally look into it, and it was a great success, and we actually did a tourism one-day service as well, and we managed to actually register a lot of these places in Weligama.
I see. So that's good. That's the part that you're doing to where you come from, the local people.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the wider picture, Sri Lanka's economy is in tatters. The growth figures are virtually non-existent. We've had various different figures from the government and so on. If you were to put it, to be quite frank, where would you press the button? What is the downfall? Where did this government go wrong? Was it the bond scam? Was it the corruption? What was it? What was it?
I would say that the bond scam was the number one issue that we had.
Right.
And I specifically mentioned to a few people when they were joking with me and telling me that people in the villages don't know what the bond scam is. I promised them that they will know what the bond scam is. And villagers who don't know how many millions, how many zeros there are in a million, all of a sudden knew how many are there in a billion.
Right.
Right? And people read up about it.
Well, at least they seem to know that that there was a Horakama at the Mahabankwa. They may not know.
There definitely was.
Yes.
We can't deny that. No, anyone who denies that should not be in politics. Anyone who says that the bond scam didn't happen, or if they try to downplay the severity of it, shouldn't be in politics. Because that is what completely ruined this government.
But how do you feel as a youthful member of the United National Party, and a party that was the lead component in this whole exercise of Yapalana and so on, and the president gave your leader, at the time with only 42 members in parliament, made him the prime minister. So he had his he was confident that if push came to shove, Mr. Wickremesinghe would be able to show a working majority in parliament and thereby sort of sustain the position or decision taken by the president. In spite and despite all that sort of positivity, how do you feel that some people within your party were party to this whole sorry episode, and which is now the bond scam?
My opinion was, at that time, and it stands now, Arjuna Mahendran should have been arrested within 24 hours after this came to light. That didn't happen. The minister in charge should have been asked to go home that day itself. That didn't happen. Someone should have resigned. No one resigned. So,
but it's so much so that they went on for another year. Mr. Mahendran was there till after the second bond, which is 10 times greater than the first. March 27.
These were all mistakes for us. This is why we are suffering now. This is why the grassroots people want Sajith Premadasa. I can tell you that. I can tell you 100% that is why they want him. Because they want him to fix what has been broken. That is why wherever he goes to any rally you see thousands of people with genuine smiles on their faces that don't come for the butt packet and don't come for the bottle of alcohol.
And do you think that what do you say to the youth of Sri Lanka? How do you ask them to use their vote? I was just speaking just before we came up to the make-up room. I was speaking to a youthful member of the Maharaja group who's on his way home, and I just asked him, I said, how are you going to vote? And he said, well, you know, I'm going to have to think about this very, very carefully. He said, this is the only thing that I've got to play my role in the future of our country. And with that, I came up.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what is your message? How do you want the youth of this country to vote?
Vote smart. Think with your mind and not with your heart. Okay? Because everyone who says that, you know, I follow my heart, that's nonsense. You have to think with your heart for the message, but think with your brain for the message to go to the heart, no. So, for me, this election is much more important than 2015. Because this election is going to mold us as a country, and we have a choice. The youth has a choice whether to vote for a 52-year-old leader or to vote for leaders who have been tried and tested, who are past their prime. You know, I'm not the sort of politician for us. I don't do mudslinging in any forum. Yeah. That's not what I do. I talk the truth and nothing but the truth. So the youth have a huge role to play in this. And I'm saying, try to use me as an example. I went against all odds, against my party. I went against the party mechanism to voice out my opinion that my deputy leader should be the next leader.
In the event that Sajith Premadasa doesn't make it,
there is not going to be a question of him not making it. We won't give up this time. I can promise you that we are not going to give up. There is not any question of him not getting it. He will get it. And I can't tell you exactly how it will happen, but we won't give up until the time, until 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock on the 8th of October, even if it's not announced by then, we will still not give up. And I can tell you, I will certainly not give up.
Are you saying that Mr. Premadasa will go on his own?
I don't think he would do that. I think his roots are too heavily buried in the UMP. I think he's firmly planted there in the UMP. He's rooted in the UMP. And, you know, just like how President Mahinda Rajapaksa said that the SLFP is now just a board at Dali Road,
yeah.
I can tell you that if he doesn't get it, the United National Party will just be a board in Sirikota, because the people want him and the people will get it.
Here we go. Thank you for these questions. There's several, and I'll take one. Do you have any plans to contest in the upcoming general elections? We really want people like you to be in the next parliament. Would you like to answer that?
I can honestly tell you that if by any chance my deputy leader or in other words Sajith Premadasa does not get this, and if he decides that he is not going to come from any forum, I will resign from my post as chairman of the Valley Urban Council and I will say goodbye to politics. But I can tell you that if he contests, and even if he loses the presidential election, and if he makes a request to me to contest the next general election, I will definitely do it.
So the youth, the supporters of the, let's call it, I don't want to say faction, but those supporting Mr. Premadasa, led by the youthful members, are you going to be redoubling your efforts after yesterday's attempt to do away with the presidency?
We are going to triple it.
Oh, okay.
We are going to triple it. This time we are definitely not giving up. There is too much at stake. The country's future is at stake. The future of the youth is at stake. Everything that is valuable to us and all the sentiments that we hold dear to us is at stake. So there is no chance that we are giving up this time for us, and you can rest assured that we will get this done.
You will?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you know, that's welcome news for people who are seeking leadership. What do you think is the first thing you believe should be done in a new government in terms of delivery? What is the most essential thing? What do you think?
Accountability, and also punish someone then and there if they do something wrong. Do what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. You know, as soon as he assumed the role of Prime Minister, one of the first things that he did was that he landed one of his best friends who was a government official in jail for taking a privately paid foreign tour.
Yeah.
So he made an example. And I can tell you 100%, if you know Sajith Premadasa the way that we do, I can tell you that he is not going to dilly-dally with any Mahendrans or any... I was just about to say a name and I was about to report in trouble for that.
We've been a right hit here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Premadasa is unlikely to tolerate
There'll be zero corruption.
Okay.
There'll be
well, that's the plus point about Mr. Premadasa, because try as I may, and my research has been done, there are no credible allegations of corruption against Mr. Premadasa. So actually, he is Mr. Clean.
Yeah, and exactly. He is the proper Mr. Clean.
Yeah.
He is the original Mr. Clean.
Yeah.
He has never had forget corruption. Now, in politics, a major thing we talk about is violence, no?
Yes.
Tell me one incident for us. Now, you were a very senior journalist, someone that I admired very much for talking the truth at all times. Tell me one instance where you have heard anyone of Sajith Premadasa going and attacking someone else. You don't hear that, because he's not cut from that cloth. He's cut from a very different cloth that sometimes I think, like Minister Harin Fernando says, it's actually amazing to think how we are going to continue to work with him, because he's a workaholic. Gets up at 4 in the morning,
yeah,
and sleeps at about 1 in the morning again the next day. So he sleeps basically only for about 2-3 hours, and he's constantly on the road, constantly on the move, wearing the same thing that he always wears. He probably has about 4 or 5 of those. But you know, what do you see? Do you see any extravagance in the man? Do you see him lavishly spending? Do you see him going for weddings? Do you see him? I mean, what wrong do you see in him?
He has an abiding interest in elephants.
Yes, and I'm glad that he loves wildlife, and not the money and the corruption that comes along with politics. So I would choose elephants over corruption any day. Or I would choose elephant over the bond scam any day.
Okay. But do you think that Sri Lanka is ready for Mr. Premadasa? I ask because Sri Lankans have a habit of, our culture is that we respect the older person, the elderly person. And do you think Sri Lanka is ready to take on, in comparative terms, Mr. Premadasa is very young, historically, if we examine the record. So, do you think Sri Lanka is ready?
I hope and pray that Sri Lanka is ready. Because if Sri Lanka has allowed so much corruption to happen at so many levels...
Do you think it's reached saturation point, the people's acceptance of corruption? Do you think the time has come where the people will say, look, enough is enough?
I think that day is soon coming, very soon, rather than later. So that's why I advise all senior politicians, play your cards right, because if not, the people will revolt. And if the people revolt, it's not going to be pretty. So please don't make it into that situation. Do what you can and support Sajith Premadasa to be the next president of this country. And I will vouch for him. And if he fails, I'll still resign.
The old is running out of excuses. The young are running out of time. What do you say?
Correct. I agree with you 100%, which is why I told you that this election is way more important than 2015. This is the make or break election for Sri Lanka. This is the election, I can tell you, which will determine a lot of young professionals. It will determine their choice of whether they are going to leave this country or not. Because I can tell you, if it goes back to autocracy, if it goes back to the level where there is no democracy, the youth will leave this country, including me. I'm not going to watch around. I have an 8-month-old son, a 9-month-old son, and I don't want him to grow up and see the current Prime Minister still be in the lead of the UMP. I want him to see a new face. And that was another main reason why I made the choice that I made. because I want Sri Lanka to progress, and Sri Lanka can only progress with the likes of progressive thinkers and not that of people that believe in autocracy.
Young Rehan is the future of the new political culture in Sri Lanka. Obviously, some people agree that the young are, the Sri Lanka is ready for the youth. And at 52, Mr. Premdas is pretty young. But what do you rate the chances? We're in our last minute. What do you rate the chances of the opposition candidate? There's a couple already.
Because I don't believe in mudslinging and because I'm not going to go into that level what other politicians go to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about the opposition because opposition is not what matters to me now. What matters is our candidate winning. And that's why it's going to be a clean campaign. And that's why if you notice the way that Sajith Premadasa speaks at all these meetings, you know that he's very sincere about the things that he does and the things that he says. So, you know, this is the last chance that we got for us, so we've got to make it count.
Rehan Jayavikrama, thank you very much indeed for your presence here on Newsline Prime.
Thank you for having me.
We've much enjoyed your presence, and we hope to see you on more programs on our network.
Yep.
And I'm sure everybody will be asking you to appear, and I hope you accept their invitations. Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline Prime at the end of a super week of politics and current affairs. Well, it's time to wish you a very good evening and a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Monday morning at 7 a.m. on TV1. That's the way it is. Take care, and of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline Prime with Araz Shaukat Ali.